Okay. After the festival. Come on, you didn't reach it! Just as Lutz's devastated yell implied, the tau fruit I had thrown didn't reach the grass, and instead hit the edge of the stone flooring, where it started crackling while exploding open. Tiny seeds shot out from the fruit the moment it broke and started sprouting. Or at least the seeds that hit the grass with dirt did. Those that hit the stone dried up rapidly, whereas those rooting in the grass had already grown to ankle length. God, what are those? They're all a trombe, and it's growing fast. Start chopping once it gets to knee length. Leslie gave instructions to the scared orphans and watched the trombe carefully as it grew beneath him. Fran, grab mine and wait in the back. At Leslie's instruction, Fran picked me up and retreated from the front line. Oh, sorry. My phone got some text messages and I was reading them. Go get him! Lutz brandished his blade and ran to harvest the wood furthest from the paved stone. Gil, running after him, was the first to chop off some wood. He swung down hard and a thin branch fell to the ground with a snap. The orphans, seeing that even a wild swing could easily chop off a branch and that the chopped off branch didn't keep growing, all charged the trombe at once. Sister mine, what exactly is going on? Just how much of this would Fran be telling the high priest? Had I doomed myself to a lecture later? I desperately ran my brain at maximum power, trying to think if he would buy it if I said this was normal outside of the temple and not a big deal at all. No, he would not think this is normal, because he knows what trombe are. A trombe plant is. That wood is used to make the highest quality plant paper that I know of. With it, we'll be able to make paper much, much better than anything else you've seen. I hadn't lied. But I also haven't given Fran the answer he wanted. He opened his mouth to say something, but Gil yelled out before he could. Knives won't work once they get too big. Step back. I'll take care of them. I turned around to see Gil urging a girl with a knife back while chopping down branch after branch, each now long enough to reach their thighs. It was clear just how much he had grown while visiting the forest. All right, we did it! Gil, striking a victory pose, looked at me and grinned. I understood that to mean, please praise me, and thus gave him a nod of approval. Is that all of it? Asked Lutz. The kids picking up branches and scouring the area nodded firmly in reply. What do you think we should do, Lutz? Should we save some of the towels and grow them later? It would be a waste to miss this opportunity to safely harvest the valuable trombe wood, but Lutz shook his head. Let's grow one or two more, then toss them around like we were planning to. Towels eventually dry up after they're taken away from soil, and there's more towels in the fruit. In the forest, we can just get more later. Sorry everyone, but would you mind harvesting a bit more? This wood can be used to make very high quality paper, and I could send more money to the orphanage by selling it. Sister mine, what will sending more money do? The orphans, lacking so much knowledge that they legitimately did not understand what money was, looked at me with confused expressions. Everything they needed in life had come in the form of divine gifts. I had explained to them that everything in the world costs money, and that they were not yet earning the money being spent to make their soup, but they didn't understand me. More money means more you can make more food for yourselves. We'll also be able to buy more winter firewood for the orphanage. Alright, let's do it. Not much firewood was given to the orphanage. The only rooms that had fireplaces were the dining hall in the girls' building and a large communal room in the boys' building. To make matters worse, the stone buildings cooled nigh instantly once they ran out of firewood, and at that point they had no choice but to huddle together for warmth. Winter supplies were a critical issue with the temple, so strapped for cash as it was. Thus, the promise of more firewood reasonably filled the kids with enthusiasm, and after that they harvested 3 entire trombe. Oh, you better hope the high priest is not here about this. Especially the revelation here that tau fruits are normally just tau fruits, but when touched by someone with mana, they turn into trombe. Which means that those could replace magic tools if they wanted to. The bad thing is that obviously, the trombes can sprout and drain all the nutrition from the ground if they got too big. But yeah, that's not a good thing, because that would turn all the magic tool things and the whole noble society and even the temple stuff on its head. In a bad way. Which means if anybody finds out, including the high priest, mine could be executed for that, essentially. Which is not good. They harvested 3 whole entire trombes. We stopped once we had an entire large basket filled with them, since the sooner we got to work on the black bark, the better. Alright, who wants to start tossing towels? Suggested Let's, making the kids stop their eager chopping and blinking confusion. We're not going to turn them all into paper? Doesn't matter what we do with these, we can always go get more. We did it today, and we can do it again. The kids cheered with excitement. Apparently picking up towels in the forest had been a lot of fun for them. I chimed in, by the way, it looks like all the grass is completely gone now, but I guess there's nothing we can do about that. Due to growing trombe after trombe, the grass had died and the earth was all upended. I flattened out the dirt as best I could and stomped on a protruding stone to get it back in line with the rest. Don't sweat it, this is the summer, grass will grow back in no time. I'll just try to look on the bright side, at least nobody has to weed around here for now. Yeah, that is true. The three of us concluded that it wouldn't be any blue priest bothering to visit the backside of the orphanage, so no harm done. Well, the high priest might. Remember, he told you all to make sure you cleaned up after yourselves. He's probably going to check to make sure you make good on that promise. I'll take care of the towel throwing, so you go get changed, mine. You look sick. Probably going to catch a fever at this rate. My body does kind of feel heavy. I'm shivering a little. Delia should have your bath ready and waiting. Shall we go? Said Fran while lifting me up. I saw over Fran's shoulder the kids started to throw the towels. The way they split into two groups and ran around while shrieking excitedly was no different from how the kids in the lower city had spent their festival. I was struck with the desire to get more games and fun things into the orphanage. Geez, what were you doing? A blue shrine maiden should not be playing with orphans so much she gets sick. When Fran reached my chambers with me slumped over his exhaustion, we found Delia waiting for us, her mouth bent into an angled frown. He brought me to the washtub, and after Delia chased him off, she took off my soaked clothing and forced me into the warm bath that had been waiting for me. She added fresh hot water to the somewhat lukewarm bath water, bringing it up to an ideal temperature. You do love your piping hot water, don't you? Murmured Delia. She then glared sharply at me. Well, your body wants hot water because you let yourself freeze in wet clothing. You shouldn't play with water when you're weak and sickly. This is just common sense. Delia, could you be a little more quiet? This is a nice bath and I want to enjoy it. I sighed as the hot water warmed my body. Of course it is. I prepared it. Yes, and thanks to you. I feel fantastic right now. Thank you. I still wasn't strong enough to draw water from a well, which meant I couldn't get ready baths for myself. I just did as I was instructed. I'm not Gil. You don't need to thank me for doing my work. Despite Delia's mumbling, I knew she was just embarrassed. I let a little giggle and sunk shoulder deep into the water before starting to think about trombes. I hadn't felt the fruit draining my mana at the time, maybe because the fruit was already on the verge of growing, or maybe because I didn't know anything about mana or the devouring back then. But this time I clearly felt my mana flowing into the fruit. I could estimate offhand that it took about 2 or 3 small magic stones worth of mana to sprout me one water-filled tau. It would depend on the amount of mana an individual had, but it seemed possible that tau fruit could help decrease the number of kids dying from the devouring. But still, it's not a good thing in the long run. An important first task would be to make knowledge of the devouring commonplace, and there would need to be people around to harvest the trombe born from the process. And if I'm being greedy, it sure would be nice if people gave the trombe wood to the mine workshop. But if what Led said was right, it would be difficult to store taus. In the spring they would run out of water and dry up half a day after being separated from the earth, and even water-filled taus in the summer would dry up after a day or two, just like how seeds dropped on paved stone walkways would dry up rapidly without sprouting. They would probably be preserved by storing them somewhere with contact to the ground. But wind or rain might wash them away, and it'd be terrifying for a trombe to sprout out of nowhere in the middle of the city. Oh, definitely. I guess I should report this to Benno before doing anything. It would be good to report that we found a way to actively harvest trombes during the summer, and while I was there, I could ask him to spread information about the devouring and how to use tau fruits to cure it. That was that. With my thoughts settled, I stood up and got out of the bath, at which point my head began to spin. I wasn't sure if it was a fever or if I had just stayed in the hot water for too long. I grabbed my head and squatted on the floor. Delia clasped a hand on her mouth to hold back a scream and hurriedly began wiping me dry. She put on my blouse and skirt while it was still kind of wet, then ran off to get Fran. Sister mine. I really should have put a mattress on my bed by now. The board's fine. Go ahead and set me on it. I instructed since Fran had picked me up and was anxiously looking all over the room for somewhere to lay me down. He rested me on the board as gently as he could. Delia, go call for Let's. Fran, could you get changed into outside clothes? I think the sooner I get home the better. As you wish. Let's was naturally soaked head to toe from the towel throwing, which left only Fran to carry me. When Let's explained to Mom that I needed to get changed at the temple after being pelted by fruit at the festival, she naturally sighed. Fran apologized with a grave expression, calling himself a failure of an attendant, but Mom waved him off, saying that she knew that this would happen if I went to the festival, and to tell the high priest that I'll be bedridden for a few days. She then tucked me into bed. It may have ended with you sopping wet and sick, but did you enjoy the festival? There were a lot of surprises, but the kids at the orphanage were all happy. That made it all worth it. Les and Mom were both right, and ultimately I spent 3 days bedridden with the fever. I had asked Les to tell Benno about the towels, and his reply was that he wanted to talk details when I was better again, which meant going to his store before I went back to the temple. Good morning, Mr. Benno. Looks like you've stirred up some trouble again. Benno immediately gave me a glare with his red eyes, the embodiment of frustration causing me to flinch. Trouble? But now we don't have to rely on trombe showing up randomly. We can harvest them at will. And it'll be perfectly safe if there's a team of people at the ready, so really I think you should be complimenting me right now. You're not entirely wrong. It's good we can harvest trombes now that you've discovered the towels are trombe seeds. But that'll be more trouble than it's worth. Yeah? Really? I hadn't thought what might be problematic about harvesting trombes. Benno murmured, thoughtless as expected. Then looked beside me at Lutz. Sorry, Lutz, but go tell the temple mine's going to be late today. Then stick with Mark until I call for you. This lecture's going to take a while. Understood, Master Benno. Lutz gave me a weary smile and wished me luck before leaving the room, having offered me none of the emotional support I needed. I now had no allies by my side and could only watch as Benno drummed his fingertips against the table. Lutz told me the gist of it. Tau fruits suck up your mana, grow rapidly, and then turn into trombes. All on point so far? Uh-huh. You think they'll be able to replace magic tools? Short term. Yes. It was a little problematic that towels weren't harvestable during the winter, but in my case, 20 of them would be enough for me to survive the winter without being overwhelmed before spring came. Though given that one's total amount of mana grew as the body developed, I didn't know how much I would need as an adult. I think so, which is why I don't speak a word of this to anyone. Not a single person, said Benno with a stern expression. My eyes widened, and for a second I couldn't believe what I had heard. So my plan was to spread the information as soon as possible. Mana is under the jurisdiction of nobles. If it gets out that cheap fruit you can find in any forest can be used in place of expensive magic tools, it's possible that noble society and the temple will get flipped upside down. Handle this the wrong way and you'll get killed. That's what I'm saying. They would throw a riot because they wouldn't be able to make their dang magic tools anymore. The temple would have no more use for mana except for, the spring dedication and all that stuff. But, yeah. But if people don't learn about this, commoners with the devouring will keep dying. I had found a money-free way to save those with the devouring, but it wouldn't help anyone if nobody knew about it. Yep, that's right, but how are you going to figure out which kids have the devouring? I sure can't tell. Can you with all your experience? I shook my head. The only kid with the devouring I had met was Freda, but I couldn't tell just from looking at her that she had mana or the devouring. It would understandably be impossible for us to save those with the devouring if we couldn't find them. We might be able to find them by having every kid that gets born hold one of those fruits, but I can guess that the second a kid's found to have mana, nobles will come steal them away. Who would have their kid tested if they knew they'd be taken away? I know your family wouldn't. That is true, they wouldn't. There was nothing I could say. In the past, I had looked for a way to extend my life without relying on magic tools. Why? To avoid nobles taking me away. If we identified kids with the devouring on a large scale, nobles would know where to find them. That would defeat the purpose. But at the same time, the information would need to be spread on a large scale for it to save anyone. If not targeting all kids at birth, then what? Will you have people bring any kid that gets a bad fever? If it's the devouring, then Taos can save them, but if it's not, you'll just turn them away. Too bad, tough, bad luck. Finding kids that way is just going to spread disease and make parents of kids without the devouring furious. I could already imagine a parent saying, "You cured that kid so easily, why not mine?" Yeah, that would definitely happen. I clenched my fist, frustrated by all the problems I hadn't considered until Benno brought them up. Yeah. What about the chance that kids with the devouring growing up without nobles could cause problems of their own? Will they be able to control their mana properly without training? What will happen to the temple once it can no longer get mana from the children of noble families that couldn't afford magic tools for everyone? Noble society has a monopoly on mana right now. What are the chances that this information would send enormous ripples through it? I don't know. I couldn't answer a single one of the questions that Benno listed out. I didn't understand this world's social structure or politics well enough, nor mana's place in the world. I get that you're trying to save the life of kids with the devouring, but the ripples will just be too big. For now, you should just keep your mouth shut about it and keep it as a lifeline if you're ever driven out of the temple or blackmailed with magic tools on the line. The scale and impact of this is just too big, or at the very least it's too big for me to handle. If Benno couldn't handle it, there's no way I could. If you asked me if I wanted to stir up more trouble right after the purging and the sovereignty ended, and noble society climbed back to its feet, my answer would be no. I didn't want that much trouble on my back. I'm thinking you can harvest some trombe wood in the forest while passing it off as coincidence, but that's it. All this about identifying those with the devouring should be kept secret under lock and key. I didn't feel comfortable leaving people to die despite knowing a way to save them. My discomfort must have shown on my face as Benno gave a sympathetic shrug. Don't look like that. If you ever find someone with a devouring, you can save them in secret. I'm just saying you shouldn't let nobles hear about this. If you want to declare war against noble society or something, don't forget it's nobles that are going to be buying those books you made. The first bit made me smile a little, and my mood brightened. If I found someone suffering with the devouring, I could save them. I didn't have to worry about those I couldn't see. I could just keep on living like I had been. At the very least, I can't start a war because if I've risen literacy rates enough, the commoners can read books too. Not that I would want to deal with that in the first place. After I replied to Benno's joke with some humor of my own, he let out a laugh. Yeah, I can't see I'd want to deal with teaching commoners to read either. I was talking about the war there. I want to spread books throughout the world, so of course I have a plan to raise literacy rates. The temple was a valuable place to be. At some point I intended to use the orphanage to hold a Sunday school class, except not on Sunday. To start, I would raise the Grey Priests into teachers through the process of instructing the orphans. Then I would develop technology for printing as best I could, which I would first use to make educational matter based on the Bible. The high priest shouldn't have any complaints if I used printing to spread the Bible. So, perfect, isn't it? I puffed out my chest with pride, but for some reason Benno was cradling his head. Every plan you've ever made has been full of holes, and I don't think this will be an exception. But you don't mind, is it physically impossible for you to use your head on anything but books? Yes, probably. I added on that I would never really try to put much effort into things outside of books, so I wasn't sure. What a waste, said Benno with a heavy sigh. Rude? It's the truth. He continued before his grin hardened into a stern expression. When Benno's expression hardened, if he lowered his voice a bit, he always had something serious to say. We're on the same page about keeping quiet about the Taos, so we can monopolize the trombes, yeah? Yes. Alright, with that out of the way, I want to hear your thoughts on the final problem on that list I gave you. Oh boy. Oh, so that's why he sent Lutz out. I swallowed hard and looked at Benno, finally understanding that Benno saying he was going to lecture me had been a bluff to get Lutz out of the room. Oh boy, here we go. Benno sighed as he explained the circumstances. I was glad to hear the details, since his list of problems had only mentioned the struggling to get permission part. I sent Mark to get their permission, but they wouldn't budge. Not sure if there's just some gap between craftsmen and merchants I'm not getting, or if his dad's just real stubborn. Any ideas? I mean, at the end of the day, Benno's problem was getting permission from Lutz's parents. That was something he needed to talk about with them, and Lutz. I might have been Lutz's childhood friend, but I was a complete third party. Those involved were Benno, who wanted to take Lutz outside the city on work, Lutz, who really wanted to leave the city, and Lutz's parents, whose lack of permission was causing friction. It wasn't really my place to say anything, but when I explained that to Benno, he scratched his head and glared at me. That's why I'm asking what you think. Every scrap of information matters here. If Lutz knows more about you than anyone, surely you know more about Lutz than anyone, right, yeah? Benno always prepared ahead thoroughly, so naturally he wanted to get information on Lutz's parents before moving forward. I didn't know too much about his work life, but it was true that after spending so much time with Lutz, I knew more about him than pretty much anyone else. Why won't they give you their permission? Isn't it for his job? That's what I want to know. According to Mark, they just said no and left it at that. Let's mention that his home situation wasn't great when he asked for the attic room, but that's just how bad it is. But just how bad is it? Lutz had stopped talking much about his home life after he announced that he was becoming an apprentice merchant and strained his relationship with his family. I could imagine that he definitely didn't want to feel like he was showing weakness to his bosses, Mark and Benno. Lutz's family is against him becoming a merchant at all. Say what? They weren't just against him becoming a traveling merchant, they were against him becoming a city merchant too? Benno opened his eyes wide with surprise, and I nodded slowly. Lutz's dad works in construction, and all his older brothers are apprentices in construction and carpentry-related jobs. His dad wanted him to do the same. According to him, getting stable work as a craftsman is better than riding the highs and lows of being a merchant. Pretty sure not all craftsmen get stable work. There were workshops out there that went bankrupt after failing to get any jobs, so not even craftsmen were absolutely guaranteed stable work. But a skilled worker would have no problem getting hired in a workshop for the same trade. They didn't have to shoulder debt to keep running a store or anything like that. Lutz once told me that his dad told him he would never accept him being a merchant, ever. He had harsh words for merchants, saying that they lived off the work of others without even making anything themselves, that one had to be a heartless monster to make it as one, and so on. He was so hostile to merchants that it made me wonder what kind of scam artist had screwed him over in the past. I'm impressed Lutz pulled through all this. Considering how most kids in the city got their jobs through the help of their parents and family, Lutz was quite the exception, but he was so lively and passionate about his work that I would never say he had made the wrong choice. Lutz was planning to become a live-in apprentice if his parents kicked him out over his decision, though that ended up not happening since his mom accepted how serious he was. A live-in apprentice? His family situation's so bad he would actually consider becoming one of those? Benno blinked in surprise. Normally there weren't any kids crazy enough to willingly throw themselves into the hell that was being a live-in apprentice. Most of them would realize that their home situation, no matter how bad it might be, was better than the alternative. I'm not entirely sure how things are for him right now, since he doesn't talk about his home life that much, but I'm worried that his brothers might not like him very much right now. What do you mean? From his family's perspective, Lutz might look like he's spitting on his dad's help to play around instead of working. They might not be able to see how much Lutz is growing and how hard he's working since they're not on the same line of work. I'm not sure since I've never talked to Lutz's brothers about him. But I still know them better than I know his dad, whom I had barely even seen before. I knew he looked the most like his eldest son Zasha, that he took pride in his construction work, but that was it. I often saw mothers chatting by the well, but I never really saw the fathers. I think Lutz will run away from home if he learns that his parents are directly stopping his dreams from coming true. Where you going? He's stubborn and won't back down now that he's made his decision. But being a live-in apprentice is a last resort. It would be too hard for him to live alone as a minor. And I think that even with all this fighting, families should stick together and help each other. Hearing that, Benno briefly looked up from the nearby stairs and gave a wry smile. He wanted to support his family ever since his parents' untimely deaths. They were precious to him, and he was such a deep, sentimental person that he would choose to live life as a bachelor after his one true love died. I doubted he would want to damage Lutz's relationship with his family. I think the only tidy solution to this would be to explain the situation to Lutz and have him agree to wait until he's an adult. By that point, he won't need his parents' permission, and there shouldn't be problems with him leaving the city. Waiting is the safest choice here. Things would be different if he couldn't leave the city for his entire life without parental permission, but as it stands, it seems like it would be best for him but just to be patient. I think by this point they would be almost 8. So when he reaches adulthood, that would be 7 years from now. Good lord. There wasn't any need to force things and shatter his relationship with his family. But Benno shook his head with a grim expression at my idea. That would be too slow. He won't make it in time. Are we in a hurry for some reason? I tilted my head in confusion. After a tight frown, Benno let out a heavy sigh. It's got something to do with work. I can't talk about it right now. As I wasn't an employee of Benno's store, it wasn't my place to dig deeper. I just nodded and moved on. In that case, it would probably be safe to assume that this is going to split apart Lutz's family no matter what. Lutz will definitely pick his life over as a merchant over his family. You wanting to take him to other cities must mean you have high hopes for him. But just how far are you willing to go to take care of an apprentice? Since Lutz was a Lahange, Benno wasn't responsible for keeping him fed or anything like that. If he started taking care of Lutz beyond what the contract stated, he would be isolating him even further from the other Lahanges, and if Benno wasn't even prepared to do that in the first place, becoming a live-in apprentice would make Lutz miserable. It would be better to just maintain the status quo over that. I gave Benno a firm look, preparing to call him out on any half-hearted non-answers, and he raised his hands in defeat. Personally, I was thinking about adopting him. His answer floored me. I never saw it coming. If Benno was willing to go that far for Lutz, I wouldn't need to worry even if he did run away from home. With Benno's silver spoon backing him up, Lutz wouldn't have to worry about his home life or work life after separating from his family to go outside the city as a merchant. I didn't think that you cared so much about Lutz, Mr. Benno. If that's how dedicated you are, you should just talk to Lutz about this and then have a meeting with his parents. It'll be fine. Talk to Lutz, huh? Benno groaned a bit, his hesitation clear on his face. No matter what happens, involving Lutz is important. Up until now, he's making decisions all on his own, and we shouldn't exclude him now. Benno adopting Lutz meant that one day he would inherit Benno's store, or to be more precise, since Karina's child would be inheriting the Gilberta company, Lutz would probably inherit the Italian restaurant, the plant paper, and basically everything to do with the mine workshop. Which was likely why he wanted Lutz with him when making a new plant paper workshop in another city. Lutz's hard work had earned Benno's approval, and realizing that made me feel as happy as I would if I were in his shoes. You'd like for Lutz to be my adopted kid. It's not the adoption I'm happy about, it's that you appreciate his hard work. Benno let out a laugh, and rang his bell to summon Mark. It seemed our secret chat was over. Yes, Master Benno, call Lutz over. Mark left the room with graceful, fluid motions and returned with Lutz. They were both walking in the same way. It was kind of funny to see how Lutz was mimicking Mark. Lutz, I need to talk to your parents about something. Could you set something up for me sooner rather than later? Benno's request was so out of the blue that Lutz froze in place and blinked for a second before replying. My parents? Certainly, Master Benno. Lutz gave his half-hearted acknowledgement, to which Benno nodded before continuing on to give him his work for the day. He wanted Lutz to stay at the temple after taking me there and help the mine workshop with the Trombe paper currently being mass-produced. Lutz gave a soft smile just like Mark's and nodded. Understood, let's go, mine. Lutz and I began our walks to the temple together. Everything was going so well for Lutz that I couldn't help but start humming. You're sure in a good mood, mine. I'm happy, so what? I don't know. I'm just glad Benno's lecture didn't get you down. Don't even remind me. According to what Lutz told me on our walk, Benno had been sending him to the temple while I was sick so that he could begin the mass production of Trombe paper. Lutz had been sending the orphans to the forest, getting the black bark, and even taking potatofuls there to make buttered potatofuls just like we used to. You know, I think I'm acting a lot more like the workshop's foreman than you are, said Lutz. I shrugged. We blue shrine maidens weren't allowed to do manual labor, and there was nothing I could do about that. Everyone was having so much fun that I wanted to join in, but I was literally not allowed to. That sucks. I'm only the forewoman, so I can get income while working as an apprentice shrine maiden. You're working hard enough that I'll hire you as an assistant foreman with a nice paycheck to boot, Lutz, so keep it up. Assistant foreman sounds cool and all, but I'm just helping you out, yeah? This is what I've always done. And you'll probably keep doing it forever since you'll help sell the new products I think up. Benno was probably making Lutz teach the orphans at the mine workshop to make paper as part of his training, a necessary step for spreading paper across the country. Oh, there's no one here? We arrived at the temple, but none of my attendants were at the gate. It was the first time since becoming a shrine maiden that nobody was waiting at the gate for me. I started to look around for them, but Lutz just took my hand and walked inside the temple. I contacted Fran and told him I didn't know when you would get here since Master Benno was lecturing you. Might as well just go straight to your chambers. Yeah, you're right. It wouldn't be nice to make them wait outside for so long. Thanks, Lutz. I'm gonna head over to the workshop. I'll see you on my way out. Lutz and I split up at the staircase to the chapel. After climbing it myself, I went around the orphanage and headed to my chambers. The door was shut, and since my attendants usually opened it, that gave me pause. I didn't carry around a bell to summon my attendants, and I would probably get scolded for being improper if I just yelled for them, so what am I supposed to do? For a brief while, I just stood in front of the door pondering what a noble would do in my situation, but no amount of pondering would change the fact that I didn't know enough about the nobility to say anything for now. It felt so silly to be worrying so much about entering my own chambers that I decided to just open the door with a knock. It's not like anybody would be there to get mad at me. I could just ask Fran what I should have done later. I knocked on the door and called out, "I'm coming in," before opening it. Inside, I saw Fran hurriedly descending the stairs. Good morning, Fran. Sorry to worry you. My fever has gone down, and I'm feeling quite better. Fran glanced at the stairs with an exceedingly troubled look and lowered his voice. Sister mine, I must tell you that... Do you know how improper it is for a young lady to walk on her own without an attendant? The High Priest... I hadn't predicted at all that the High Priest would be in my room. My mouth hung open in shock as I looked up the stairs and saw him staring back down at me. Close your mouth, it's unseemly. But more importantly, putting aside the lower city, walking on your own in the temple is exceedingly improper. Take care not to do it again. What was I supposed to do? At Fran's encouragement, I walked up to the second floor where I meekly listened as the High Priest scolded me while elegantly drinking tea. According to him, the noble course of action would have been to send word ahead and have an attendant wait at the gate no matter what. Alternatively, I could have informed the gate guard of my arrival and waited in a nearby waiting room for an attendant to come get me. That's a bit too advanced for me, and really, I can't believe he's as serious about something as simple as opening a door. I know. When is this lecture going to end? I started to get bored of listening to the lecture, at which point I realized I didn't know why the High Priest was in my room, and used that to change the subject. High Priest, I've learned how to open a door. This was not about opening a door. Were you even listening? I'm telling you how to act like a proper lady. Oh, he wasn't scolding me about the door in particular. I didn't realize. It looked like the lecture was about to heat up big time, so I interrupted with a question. Might I ask the reason for your visit today? It must be something important for you to come all the way to my chambers. Are you not in a hurry? Normally, I would already be heading to his room to do paperwork. He had mentioned having more spare time thanks to my assistance, but I wouldn't want that time spent on lecturing me. My question reminded the high priest of why he was here, and after a cough, he looked at me. Has your fever gone entirely down? Oh? Yes, I'm fully recovered. Sorry to have worried you. That is good to hear, he said, while forming an ice-cold smile. I straightened my back with a jerk, realizing I was about to get the kind of lecture he gave in his secret room. I believe I told you not to cause a stir, did I not? What? I had been bedridden with a fever for so many days that coming right out of a talk with Benno, I had no idea what the high priest was talking about. What story was he talking about? I went to check if you had cleaned up after yourself and found all the dirt in a wide area completely upended, with some of the stone pavement slightly out of place. I had thought that no blue priest would bother going there, but apparently the high priest had gone out of his way to check up after us. I told you, girl, that he would do that. Did you not think that he would possibly do that? It seemed that he was the kind of hard worker who felt compelled to confirm things himself, despite being so busy. His light golden eyes narrowed, affording me no escape. What in the world did you do to cause all that? Well, just as I informed you ahead of time, we looked at Fran. What exactly had he told the high priest? I had no idea what to say to settle the situation. Both Fran and the orphans stated they harvested wood to turn into paper, that they threw towels amongst themselves, and finally that you fell sick with a fever, nothing more. And that's all that happened. I nodded repeatedly after he finished. That probably meant that nobody had leaked how the wood they'd harvested was from Trombase. Oh yeah, he would have had a heart attack at that. Spread from towels that had drained my mana. Since I didn't know exactly what the high priest knew, I kept my mouth shut so as not to say anything unnecessary. I could ask Fran what he had said later. For everyone to answer the same, they must be telling the truth, but you cannot deny causing a stir after doing enough of something to push the stone pavement itself out of place, said the high priest. I steeled myself for a barrage of questions only for him to glare at me. Mine? I sentenced you to 1 day in the repentance chamber. Wait, he's not questioning me? Benno would definitely question me until he got the answers he wanted. Are you sure about this? Perhaps due to having asked the orphans about the situation while I was bedridden, the high priest pursued the subject no further and simply punished me instead. The repentance chamber? Yes, you will pray to the gods while reflecting on what you have done. I was honestly a little disappointed, but in contrast to my general apathy toward chilling in detention for a day, Fran's face paled and Delia shouted, "Unbelievable!" out loud. I have never heard of a blue shrine maiden being sent to the repentance chamber. It would be disgraceful. Considering what I'm surprised she didn't. High priest, I beg you to reconsider. It seemed that I was the first apprentice blue shrine maiden in history to be sent to the repentance chamber. But to be honest, as mentioned, I would pick chilling in detention over the high priest digging into what happened at the Star Festival with this frosty rage freezing me over. Attendance. I have earned this punishment by breaking my promise with the high priest. It's only natural that I take responsibility for my actions. I am happy as long as the orphans are not punished. I would gladly take any punishment that didn't lead to the orphans getting penalized in association. They had so much fun that day, and I didn't want their happy memories of the festival tarnished by lectures and time in the repentance chamber. High priest, where is the repentance room, and what should I do within it? I understand that I need to repent, but is there anything in particular I need to do? Visions of punishments I had suffered back in my Arano days ran through my head. Being forced to clean, having to write, I won't do it again 100 times, and so on. But the high priestess raised an eyebrow in disbelief. I had apparently just asked a question with an answer exceedingly obvious to everyone in the temple. What else but offering prayers to the gods? Wait, he wants me to do that silly praying pose for the whole day? The sheer intensity of that punishment left me at a loss for words, at which point Gil tried comforting me by saying he was used to it and would go in with me. That was naturally against the rules, so I went to the chambers on my own. Reflect on what you have done. The high priest brought me to the repentance room right next to the chapel and directed me inside. It was a small room, made of the same white stone as the chapel, and I could see thin slits at the top for letting in air. It also let in light, which made the white room brighter than most. The room was chilly despite it being summer, since even the floor was made of stone. It would probably be miserable in the winter, but it wasn't so bad in the summer. Sister Mine, will you be okay? Yes, I'll be fine. Fran and Gil's worried faces vanished from view after the wooden door closed. Without anyone watching, there was nobody to check if I was actually praying, so I immediately sat in a corner. The chilly floor was very calming. In order to kill time, I decided to take out Benno's list of problems, which I had stealthily hidden in my skirt pocket, and think about them. I could do all that repenting stuff when the High Priest came to check on me. I think an introduction-only system would work well for this problem. But what about this problem? I feel like it'd be kind of awkward to ask the High Priest if I can eat lunch and dinner with him just to learn more about noble food. Yeah. Whew. A big yawn swelled up out of me as I stared at the list of problems. Maybe I still wasn't feeling too well. I was getting really sleepy out of nowhere. Judging by how hungry I was, it was probably past noon. Are they seriously gonna make her go without eating too? Jeez. That's why she collapsed before. Well, that and getting rid of Samana too was why she had collapsed that day. I folded up the list of problems, stuck it in my pocket, and lay down on the floor. I closed my eyes and let the pleasant fog take me over so I could recover a bit through an afternoon nap. Mine, why are you sleeping when you should be... Fran? Sister Mine. My body had chilled to the bone while I napped on the cold stone floor. By the time the High Priest came to get me, I was feverishly stuck to the floor, unable to move at all. I knew it! See, this is what I tell you. Don't let her skip meals! I could hear Fran cradling his head and saying that he would apologize to my mom for letting me get sick again the day after I went back to the temple. Had she not recovered? If I may, High Priest, I believe you underestimated the extent of Sister Mine's poor health. I did request that you reconsider sending her to the repentance chamber. I see, you spoke not for her honor, but for her health. Duh! By ignoring Fran's warning, he had gotten me sick right after I recovered from my last fever. The High Priest considered that his full responsibility, and in the end, he ended up being the one repenting. Okay, hang on. 67 more pages left. Yay! What time is it? I don't want to go to work, but I gotta stop. I'll see you guys next time.